The rain came down in sheets that blurred the world into a watercolor of regret, each drop a reminder of the life I'd let slip away. I sat in my beat-up Honda outside the all-night Safeway in downtown Portland, engine off, wipers slapping uselessly against the storm, my knuckles white on the wheel as if holding on could stop the ache in my chest from spilling out. When I finally pushed through those automatic doors, dripping and defeated, a single voice cut through the fluorescent hum. "Hey, you look like you could use a towel more than a cart. Rough night?" I froze, water pooling at my sneakers, my eyes locking onto the guy behind the express lane. He was maybe a year or two older than me, early 30s, with that effortless Pacific Northwest vibe. Faded flannel over a band tee, dark hair tousled like he'd just rolled out of bed, and green eyes that crinkled at the corners with a warmth that felt dangerously real. His name tag read Joe, and in that split second, as he tossed me a clean shop rag from under the counter, I swear the rain outside paused, like the universe had hit mute just to let his kindness land. But kindness was a trap I'd fallen for before. 3 months earlier, my fiancé, ex-fiancé now, had walked out with half our savings and a note that said, "I can't do this anymore. No fight, no warning, just gone." Portland's gray winters had always been my least favorite. But this one, it was a black hole, sucking in every forced smile at my graphic design job, every half-hearted swipe on Grindr that ended in ghosting. I mumbled a thanks, grabbed a basket, and wandered the aisles like a ghost, piling in the usual suspects. Microwave burritos, a 6-pack of cheap IPA, and a pint of Ben & Jerry's that promised comfort but delivered only brain freeze. Joe rang me up without the small talk most clerks force, his fingers quick on the scanner, but when he slid the bag across, there was a post-it stuck to the top. "Hang in there, stranger. First coffee's on me next time you're in." No phone number, no flirt, just words that hit like sunlight cracking through clouds. I crumpled it into my pocket, drove home to my empty studio apartment overlooking the Willamette, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't cry myself to sleep. The next morning, sunlight pierced the blinds like an accusation, mocking the storm's retreat. I woke with a headache that pulsed in time with my regrets. The post-it unfolded on my nightstand like a dare. First coffee's on me. It was stupid, probably just store policy, a way to lure back sad sacks like me. But by noon, I was back at Safeway, pretending to browse the energy bars, my heart thudding like I'd shown up for a blind date. Joe spotted me from across the store, wiping down a spill by the bakery case. "Knew you'd come back," he called, his voice carrying that easy Oregon drawl, like he'd grown up hiking the Cascades. "Black with 1 sugar, right? Or am I projecting my own caffeine sins?" I laughed. Actually laughed, the sound foreign in my throat, and watched as he poured from the ancient Mr. Coffee machine behind the customer service desk. No line, no rush. It was a Tuesday lull, the kind where Portlanders nursed hangovers from microbrew nights. We leaned against the counter, steam rising between us, and for 20 minutes, he didn't ask about my soaked entrance the night before. Instead, he talked about the barista at the food cart pod down the block who'd burned his scones that morning, and how the Willamette's fog made every commute feel like a scene from a noir film. "I'm Jordan, by the way," I said finally, stirring my cup like it held answers. "Joe," he replied, as if I hadn't clocked the tag. And yeah, I remember faces. Part of the gig. Spot the regulars before they spot the expired yogurt. There was no pressure, no lean-in that screamed agenda. Just 2 guys shooting the shit in a grocery store that smelled like fresh bread and faint regret. When my shift at the design firm loomed, I pocketed the empty cup and headed out, but not before he slipped another post-it into my hand. "Try the trail mix aisle next time. Nuts over chocolate beats heartbreak every time." I walked to my car grinning like an idiot, the November chill nipping at my ears, but for once, it didn't bite as deep. Weeks blurred into a rhythm I hadn't known I craved. I'd swing by Safeway after work, not always for groceries. Sometimes just a Red Bull or a pack of gum. And Joe would be there, clocking out from stocking shelves or manning the self-checkout. Our coffees evolved. Mine black with sugar, his loaded with oat milk and cinnamon because dairy's a betrayal waiting to happen. He'd tell stories of growing up in Eugene, son of a logger and a schoolteacher, How he'd moved to Portland chasing a music dream that fizzled into bar gigs and this dead-end job. I shared bits of mine. Chicago transplant, art school dropout turned freelancer. The fiancé who'd bailed when my depression hit like a freight train. "You're tougher than you think, Jordan," he'd say, eyes steady over his cup. "Most guys would have checked out by now. But you're still showing up." It wasn't flirting, not at first. It was survival, two loners trading oxygen in a city that prided itself on reinvention but often just recycled the same heartaches. Portland's vibe, craft cocktails in Alberta Arts District lofts, queer open mics at Q Center. The endless drizzle that mirrored your mood made it easy to hide. But Joe saw through the fog. One night, after a client chewed me out over a logo revision, I vented in the parking lot, rain slicking my hair. He listened from the curb, hood up, then pulled a battered acoustic guitar from his truck bed. "Play you something," he said, strumming a melody that was half Dylan, half his own ache. The notes wove through the downpour, raw and unpolished, about lost trails and second chances. When he finished, I was crying not ugly sobs, but the kind that clean you out. He set the guitar aside and hugged me, quick and solid, like he knew words would shatter the moment. From there, it shifted. Invites to low-key hangs. A hike in Forest Park where we talked about coming out. Me in high school to a family that nodded and moved on. Him later, after a bar fight in college that left him with a scar on his knuckle. "Love's not a straight line, man," he'd say, punching my arm as we crested a ridge, the city sprawling below like a promise. Dinners at food carts, Korean tacos from Koi Fusion, falafel from the Halal Guy's knockoff, where our knees brushed under picnic tables, accidental at first, then not. By December, the loneliness had thawed into something warmer, riskier. We kissed on New Year's Eve, fireworks popping over the river from a rooftop party he'd dragged me to. His lips tasted like champagne and pine, his hands tentative on my waist, like he was afraid I'd vanish. "I've wanted this since that first rainy night," he whispered against my neck, and I believed him because in his eyes, I saw my own reflection, not broken but whole. But Portland winters don't let go easy. Joe's shifts stretched long, mine buried me in deadlines, and doubts crept in like frost on windows. One evening, scrolling Instagram in bed, I saw it. A photo of Joe, arm around a guy named Alex, tanned, laughing, tagged from a Eugene Music Fest last summer. The caption: "Miss these nights, bro, Portland's stealing you away." Harmless? Maybe. But after my ex's betrayal, trust was a muscle I'd forgotten how to flex. I confronted him the next coffee run, voice sharp. "Who's Alex?" Joe blinked, caught mid-pour. "Old roommate from college." "Why?" The photo burned in my pocket. "Looks cozy. You forget to mention exes." His face fell, the warmth draining like sand. "Jordan, it's not. Alex is straight, married now. That was years ago." But the seed was planted. Arguments followed, small at first about canceled plans, then exploding into accusations. "You're pulling away," I'd say. "Just like him." Joe fired back, hurt etching lines around his eyes. "I'm here, every damn day. What more do you want?" The high came crashing in mid-January. We'd patched it with a weekend getaway to Cannon Beach, waves crashing like applause, haystack rocks standing sentinel against the tide. Curled in a driftwood cabin, bodies tangled under quilts. He traced my spine and said, "I love you, Jord. For real. No ghosts." I echoed it, meaning every syllable, the ocean's roar drowning out my fears. Back in the city, though, reality gnawed. My ex emailed, wanting his stuff back, casual as if he hadn't gutted me. I spiraled, snapping at Joe over nothing, and he retreated, shifts overlapping with late practices for an open mic revival. Then the betrayal hit, not from him but the world. Joe's mom called during a rare dinner at his cramped apartment in Selwood, walls lined with vinyls and half-finished song sheets. "Dad's sick," she said, voice cracking over speaker. "Cancer. Come home, Joey." He hung up, face ashen, and I held him while he shook, plans for our future fracturing like sea glass. Eugene was 2 hours south, but it felt like a chasm. His family conservative, whispers about that phase from his teens. They don't know about us, he admitted, pulling away. Not yet. I pushed. Tell them. We're in this. But fear won. He drove down alone weekends, coming back hollow, dodging my questions. One night, after a show at Doug Fir where his set killed but his eyes were distant, I found the letter in his jacket, handwritten from Alex. Heard about your dad, man. Crashing on the couch if you need. Remember, we're family. Innocent, but in my paranoia, it twisted. Late-night confessions, shared beers turning to more. The fight was biblical. In my apartment, rain lashing windows again, I threw it at him. If you can't choose us over them, over this lie, then what's the point? Joe's voice broke. It's not a lie. I love you. But family. Family? I laughed bitterly. Mine accepted me. Yours? You're ashamed. He left at dawn. Truck rumbling into the gray, and Portland swallowed me whole. Days bled into weeks, Safeway a no-go zone, coffees tasting like ash. I threw myself into work, designs bleeding emotion onto screens. But the loneliness roared back, fiercer. A winter without end. Spring teased with cherry blossoms along the esplanade. But I was numb, walking the river path alone, Joe's guitar riffs echoing in my skull. A client notice came, big gig in Seattle, escape hatch. I packed, sold the Honda, ready to bolt. The night before, a knock. Joe on my stoop, soaked. Not from rain but tears. I told them, he said, voice raw. About you, about us, that, he said, to fight for what matters. We talked till sunrise, hurts laid bare. My abandonment scars, his fear of loss. No grand gestures, just hands clasped, promises whispered. Small steps, he said, echoing that first post-it. Like that night I handed you a rag. I pulled him inside, the door clicking shut on the storm. Portland's seasons turned, but ours? It bloomed messy, real, rooted deep. The reconciliation wasn't fireworks. It was the steady burn of a hearth fire, warming corners I'd forgotten existed. Joe moved a duffel into my studio that first week. His guitar propped against the wall like a sentinel, song sheets scattering across the kitchen table amid my sketch pads. We'd wake to the hum of the Max train rattling by, brew coffee strong enough to strip paint, and navigate the awkward dance of two lives merging. His vinyl collection clashing with my minimalist shelves, his habit of leaving dishes in the sink met with my passive-aggressive sticky notes. But it worked, in that beautifully flawed American way, where love isn't a fairy tale but a choose-your-own adventure patched with duct tape and hope. We biked the Springwater corridor on Saturdays, wind whipping through Doug Firs, stopping at picnic spots where he'd unpack PB and JS and I'd mock his gourmet additions of hot sauce. You're turning me into a Portland cliché, I'd tease, and he'd grin. That crinkle-eyed smile that still made my stomach flip. His dad's illness cast a long shadow, though. Trips to Eugene became our ritual. Me tagging along after the third, nerves jangling like loose change. Joe's family home was a rancher on the outskirts. Sagging porch swing and a yard dotted with rhododendrons his mom tended like old friends. She hugged me stiffly at first, her grip betraying the steel of a woman who'd buried dreams to raise boys in logging towns. Joseph's told us about you, she'd say, setting extra plates at dinner, her eyes flicking to the rainbow pin on my backpack. His dad, gaunt in his recliner, chain-smoking despite the chemo, was the wild card. Heard you design logos, he'd grunt one evening, oxygen tubes snaking from his nose. Make one for the mill? Something that says, we're still standing. I did. Rough sketch on a napkin, axes crossed with evergreens, and when I showed Joe later, he traced the lines with his finger, voice thick. You get it, Jord. The fight in the quiet. Those visits peeled back layers of Joe I hadn't seen. The dutiful son fielding midnight calls from the hospice nurse. The musician penning lyrics in stolen moments that bled raw grief. One night, after a particularly brutal round, he broke in the guest room we'd claimed, sobs muffled into my shoulder. What if I lose him before I say everything? I held him, whispering nonsense about stars over the Mackenzie River, how loss carves space for more light. Back in Portland, We leaned into the city's queer heartbeat to anchor us. Pride was a blur of rainbow flags snapping in the breeze along Tom McCall waterfront, but we found our spots quieter. Poetry slams at Literary Arts where Joe read originals about roots twisting toward unlikely sun. His voice gravelly under stage lights, my applause the loudest. Or lazy Sundays at the Hollywood Theater, catching indie flicks with butter-drenched popcorn. His head on my shoulder during the credits. Work pulled me in new directions. A freelance collab with a queer-owned apparel line. Logos that screamed visibility without shouting. Joe cheered from the sidelines, booking his first paid gig at a Mississippi Avenue dive bar. To us, we'd toast post-show. IPAs clinking in a booth sticky with spilled dreams. His set list crumpled in my pocket like a love letter. Yet undercurrents stirred. My ex resurfaced via text, saw your Insta. Happy for you, man. Coffee? Closure. I deleted it, but the ghost lingered, whispering doubts. Joe sensed it, pulling me aside after a hike in Tryon Creek. Ferns brushing our calves. Talk to me, he'd urge, green eyes searching. And I did, purging the poison, his hands steady on my knee. He doesn't get to rent space in your head anymore. Eviction notice served. Summer hit like a revelation. Portland shedding its gray skin for farmers' markets bursting with marionberries and live bluegrass under striped tents. We road-tripped the Oregon coast in a borrowed Subaru, windows down, Tom's album cranked, stopping at Tillamook for cheese factory tours that dissolved into cheese-fueled makeout sessions in the creamery parking lot. This is living, Joe said, salt air tangling his hair. And I believed him, the Pacific stretching endless, mirroring the possibility we'd clawed back. But autumn whispered warnings. Joe's dad rallied briefly, enough for a family barbecue where his mom pulled me into the kitchen, flour-dusted apron hugging her waist. He lights up around you, Jordan, like he did playing that fool guitar as a kid. Her words settled deep, a bomb, but the shadow loomed larger. November brought the call, hospice, final days. We drove south in silence, Willamette Valley's vineyards blurring past, Joe's hand vice-tight on mine. The room smelled of antiseptic and wilted lilies. His dad a wisp under starched sheets. Brought the artist, Joe said, voice cracking, and his dad beckoned me close. Keep him honest, he wheezed, eyes fierce despite the frailty. Boys got a habit of running from the good. I nodded, throat tight, and as we left, Joe lingered, words too private for witnesses. On the drive back, he pulled over at a viewpoint, fog cloaking the river below. He said to marry you, someday, if you'll have a mess like me. Tears came then, hot and unbidden, but laced with light. Every day, I replied, kissing his temple, the world sharpening into focus. Winter returned, softer this time. We scattered ashes in the Cascades come spring. Joe's mom toasting with blackberry wine. To roots and wings, Portland bloomed around us. Food cart pods alive with sizzle and spice. Our apartment now ours with his records alphabetized beside my drafting table. The small gesture that started it all? It echoed in everything. Post-its on the fridge, your turn to pick the flick. Coffees brewed pre-dawn for my early shifts. Joe's music took off. A residency at a Pearl District lounge. Songs about rainy nights and second acts drawing crowds that spilled onto Burnside. One evening, post-set, he found me in the green room, guitar case open like a confessional. This one's for you, he said, sliding a ring across, simple silver, etched with a tiny evergreen. Not a proposal, not yet, but a vow, hang in there, partner. I slipped it on, the weight grounding, and pulled him close. Outside, Portland's lights twinkled like stars we'd earned. The loneliest season of memory, traded for this, messy, profound, hours. Yet life, that stubborn storyteller, wasn't done. A job offer came for me, lead designer in San Francisco, the kind of leap that screamed ambition. Joe's gigs were gaining traction, but uprooting? We waited over late-night talks on the balcony. City hum below, his head on my lap. Go if it calls, he said finally, fingers tracing my ring. I'll follow, or we'll figure remote. Love's not pinned to a zip code. I turned it down, not out of fear but choice. Portland had claimed us. its rivers and rains weaving our story into its banks. We built instead a tiny house hunt in Montevilla, yard for a garden, space for his studio. Years folded like an accordion. Anniversaries marked with coast drives, his album release party where I emceed, voice steady. To the clerk who handed me more than a rag, his mom visited, bringing pie and acceptance, her hug looser now. The betrayal came not from us but time. Joe's cancer scare, benign lump, thank God, mirrored his dad's, forcing reckonings. We fought through scans and shadows, emerging tighter, therapy sessions in a cozy Hawthorne office unpacking baggage we dragged from youth. In the end, our story wasn't epic sweeps but quiet victories. Holding hands at family Thanksgivings, adopting a mutt named Scout who chewed Joe's set lists, volunteering at the Q Center where we'd met wide-eyed kids echoing our younger selves. That first rainy night? It was the hook, but we were the line, reeling in grace from the ordinary. And in Portland's endless drizzle, we danced, soaked but shining. Looking back, the real storm wasn't the weather, it was the one brewing inside me, the kind that turns introspection into self-sabotage. After Joe's proposal light with the ring, I threw myself into planning, not the wedding kind, but the life kind. Vision boards pinned to the fridge with Polaroids of potential homes, playlists for road trips we'd take once his album dropped. Portland's creative pulse fueled it. Networking mixers at the Ace Hotel where I'd pitch collabs. Joe jamming with indie acts at Mississippi Studios. Our evenings a whirlwind of after-parties and all-nighters fueled by Stumptown cold brew. But cracks spiderwebbed. My freelance load ballooned. Deadlines stacking like Jenga blocks, leaving me snappish and distant. Joe noticed, of course. His empathy was a superpower, honed from years reading customers' moods behind that Safeway counter. "You're burning out, Jord," he'd say, rubbing my shoulders after I'd hunched over my MacBook till 2 a.m. "Let's unplug. Road trip to the Badlands or something." I'd nod, promised to delegate, but the hustle was my armor, shielding against the void my ex had carved. Therapy helped. Weekly sessions with a counselor named Mia, her office overlooking Powell's books, where I'd unpack the abandonment like old comics, page by yellowed page. "You're worthy of rest," she'd say, her voice a gentle prod. Joe joined once, our hands linked on the couch, navigating how his own grief over his dad amplified my triggers. Summer festivals became our reset, Waterfront Blues Fest, where we'd sway to soulful horns under string lights, his arm around my waist as fireworks bloomed over the bridge. Or the Oregon Country Fair in Veneta, a hippie haven of tie-dye and didgeridoos, where we lost ourselves in drum circles, emerging dust-streaked and laughing. Scout the dog tied to a tent pole with a chew toy. His music career ticked upward. A track licensed for a Netflix indie flick. Buzz from a Portland Mercury feature calling him the everyman's troubadour. I designed his merch. Tees with stylized guitars morphing into evergreens. Sales funding a proper studio in our new rental. A cozy bungalow in Laurelhurst with creaky oak floors and a backyard swing. That's when the conflict ignited, subtle as a match in dry grass. An old contact from my Chicago days emailed. A high-profile agency gig, remote but intense, promising stability for the house down payment we dreamed of. "It's perfect," I told Joe over takeout pad thai from Pine State Biscuits, excitement bubbling. "We could lock in that fixer-upper on Belmont." He poked at his noodles, eyes on his plate. "Sounds big. You sure it's not just running from here?" The words landed like a slap. "Running? This is building, Joe. For us." He sighed, that familiar crinkle deepening into furrows. "I know. Just, after your ex, the moves, the fresh starts. Feels like chasing instead of standing. We let it simmer, but resentment fermented. My late nights stretched, calls with East Coast clients bleeding into date nights. Joe filled voids with gigs, coming home smelling of bar smoke and strangers' cheers. Our bed a no man's land of turned backs. The betrayal brewed from misunderstanding. I found texts on his phone, innocent or so they seemed, from Alex, the college roommate. "Dude, crashing in PDX next week for that fest. Couch space?" Followed by Joe's reply, "Yeah, man. Beers on me. Miss the old crew. Paranoia, that old fiend. Twisted it." Late one night, fueled by a solo whiskey at the apartment, I confronted him as he stumbled in from soundcheck. Alex again? What's this? Reunion tour for your straight exes. Joe recoiled, guitar case thudding to the floor. Jesus, Jordan. He's married, has kids. It's nostalgia, not what? A pattern. My voice rose, years of hurt spilling. You hide from your family about us for months, now this? Am I just the Portland pit stop? His face crumpled, green eyes flashing hurt. I've given you everything. My songs, my home, my heart. And you throw accusations like confetti? The fight escalated, words as weapons. My ambition called selfish, his loyalty questioned as complacency. He stormed out, crashing at his mom's in Eugene for a week. Radio silence broken only by a single text. Need space. Don't follow. Portland turned hostile without him. The Safeway aisles mocking with empty express lanes. Forest Park trails echoing too loud. I threw myself into the gig, designs pouring out in manic bursts. But Mia called me on it in session. This is flight, Jordan, not fight. I drove south uninvited, the I-5 a ribbon of regret under overcast skies. His mom's porch light glowed like a beacon, but Joe met me at the door, weary in sweats. You shouldn't be here. Please, I begged, rain starting to speckle. I was wrong. Fear talking, not me. We sat on the swing, creaking confessions. His text to Alex a lifeline to pre-cancer normalcy. My jealousy a scar from betrayal's blade. I choose you, he said finally, hand finding mine. Every time. But we gotta trust the quiet parts too. Forgiveness was a bridge we rebuilt plank by plank. Back home, we instituted Unplugged Thursdays. No screens, just board games and takeout. Scout curled at our feet. His album release was a triumph. Intimate show at the old church, stained glass filtering light on a crowd of friends. His set closing with a ballad about rain-soaked strangers finding shore. Fall leaves carpeted our walks in Irving Park, crunching underfoot like affirmations. The agency gig, I negotiated part-time, balance over burnout. Joe's mom visited for Thanksgiving. Her pie recipe now ours. Toasts to absent fathers laced with laughter. Winter brought the high tide of our story. A commitment ceremony, not legal. Oregon recognized us, but we wanted personal. Under evergreens in Tryon Creek. Friends circled with lanterns. Mia officiating with readings from Whitman and Ocean Vuong. Joe's vows. You pulled me from my own lonely season, with a glance and a rag. I vow to be your steady rain, your clearing sky. Mine. Your gesture was the spark. You've been my fire since. We danced to his acoustic cover of Wonderwall. Portland's skyline winking approval. But humanity's arc bends toward complexity. Joe's diagnosis came in March. A shadow on his lung scan, echo of his dad's ghost. Early, the doc said, treatable. Chemo loomed, but so did resolve. We faced it tag team. My designs funding co-pays, his music a defiant soundtrack. Gigs paused, but he wrote from the infusion chair, melodies born of needles and nausea. I read to him Steinbeck's Travels, evoking California dreams we'd shelve for now. Community rallied. Q Center fundraisers. Alex flying in with his family for a barbecue that bridged old wounds. Your family too, he told me, clapping my shoulder. Spring thawed the fear. Scans clear, hair regrowing in defiant curls. We hiked Multnomah Falls, mist kissing our faces, scouts splashing in pools. We made it, Joe said, ring glinting. Our story? No tidy bow, but a tapestry. Threads of loss, love, quiet gestures weaving endurance. In America's heartland of reinvention, we'd carved home not in place, but person. And that, in the end, was the pull from loneliness. Not grand saves, but hands extended in the rain. Recovery reshaped us, like river stones smoothed by relentless current. Joe's energy returned in fits. Good days strumming on the porch swing, bad ones napping with Scout's head on his lap. Chemo's echo a low hum. I adapted my studio workflow, client calls from the kitchen while he dozed, sketches inspired by his sleeping form. lines of jaw and fretboard, vulnerability etched in graphite. Portland's Spring Symphony accompanied. Azaleas exploding in the Chinese garden, food cart aromas wafting from carts at Director Park. We ventured out gingerly. A low-key picnic at Washington Park, rose gardens perfuming the air. His laughter tentative but genuine as I fed him strawberries, juice staining fingers pink. The betrayal scar tissue tested us anew. An anonymous email hit my inbox mid-May, forwarded from an old client. A leaked thread from the agency, my designs borrowed for their pitch deck, credited to a junior without mention. Rage boiled. Months of nights stolen, now erased. They can't do this. I fumed to Joe over dinner. Thai basil chicken cooling untouched. He set down his fork, eyes steady. They can, and they did. But you're more than that, theft. Fight smart, not scorched earth. His calm was infuriating, a mirror to my chaos. Easy for you, your music soul, not spreadsheets. This is my security, our future. The argument simmered, my pettiness peaking in a slammed door, him retreating to the studio with guitar in tow. Hours later, a melody seeped under the crack, haunting, resolving into hope. I joined him, cross-legged on the rug, apology in my silence. We reported it, lawyers pro bono from a queer legal collective downtown. Settlement came quiet, credit restored, a check for back work. Victory tasted bittersweet, lesson sinking. Creation's value isn't ownership, but sharing the spark. Summer deepened our roots. Joe's return gig at the Pearl Lounge sold out, fans chanting choruses he'd written in hospital beds. I emceed again, voice cracking on the intro. For the man who turns pain to poetry. Backstage, confetti strewn. He pulled me into a kiss that tasted of sweat and triumph. We hosted barbecues in the bungalow yard. His mom grilling salmon, Alex's family road tripping up with kids who adored Scout. Stories flowed like microbrews. Joe's Eugene escapades, my Chicago winters dodging blizzards. Laughter bridged gaps. Humanity in the grill smoke and esmores. Fall brought introspection. Leaves turned the gorge into fire. Our anniversary hike along Eagle Creek a ritual. Waterfalls thundering approval. His hand in mine steady despite fatigue. What now? He asked at Punch Bowl Falls, mist veiling us. Kids? Travel? Or just this? I pondered, water's roar filling pauses. All of it, but mostly us, evolving, not ending. Winter's cusp tested resolve. A storm knocked power out, candles flickering our faces as we played cards by lantern light, scouts snoring by the hearth. News broke nationwide, anti-LGBT bills snaking through legislatures, echoes of fights we'd thought won. Protests erupted downtown, rainbow flags waving defiant. We marched, signs scrawled, "Love wins always." Joe's voice amplified on a makeshift stage, song about quiet loves in loud storms. Mia texted pride, "You're living the resistance." Spring 2026 dawned with promise. My portfolio landed a book cover for a coming-out memoir, illustrations tender as our story. Joe's second album, Rain-Scarred Roots, charted indie lists, a track going viral on TikTok, teens lip-syncing lines about grocery store grace. The high tide crested in June. Legal marriage at Multnomah County Courthouse, paperwork stamped under chandeliers, then a reception at our place. String lights in the yard, playlist of our lives. Vows exchanged anew. Mine vowing to see your shadows and love the light within. His to be the gesture that pulls you through. Honeymoon was local luxury. Glamping at Oxbow Regional Park, tent by the sandy river, stargazing with wine. This is enough, he murmured, fire crackling. But climax loomed, unbidden. July heatwave baked the city, wildfires smudging horizons. Joe's mom called frantic. House fire in Eugene, heirlooms lost, her displaced. We loaded the Subaru, driving through ash-veiled valleys, arriving to charred beams and her huddled on the lawn. Guilt gnawed Joe, should have visited more, but we rallied, GoFundMe surging from his fanbase. My designs for merch to aid, sheltering her in our guest room, stories unfolded nights over chamomile. Her youth in the 70s, unspoken queer curiosities stifled by era's grip. Healing wove through loss. We rebuilt her porch together, hammer swings sinking like rhythm sections. "You too," she said one dusk, paint-splattered. "You're the family I dreamed for him." Back in Portland, the betrayal's final twist. My ex, sober now, reached out via mutuals. Apology letter hand-delivered to the agency, owning his wreckage. I read it by the river, tears salting the Willamette, then burned it, ashes scattering like release. Autumn gilded edges. Joe's tour beckoned, West Coast run, opening for a folk act. I joined stretches, sketching venues, our love a portable hearth. One night in Seattle's Pike Place, under market lights, he buskied for buskers, crowd tossing bills, me harmonizing soft. Winter wrapped gentle. Holiday lights festooned Pioneer Square, our tree adorned with posted ornaments. Memories scribbled. First coffee, cancer clear. New Year's on the waterfront, fireworks bursting. His kiss sealing another year. The human core emerged in quiet. Volunteering at the food bank where Joe once clerked, handing carts to those rain-soaked like I'd been. "Full circle," he said, eyes meeting mine across the lot. Our story, dramatic in arcs, emotional in depths, romantic in glances, human in flaws, unfolded not in isolation, but connection. That grocery gesture, catalyst for a life where loneliness yielded to legacy. Love, chosen daily, pulling us from seasons into eternity. As years layered like Portland's basalt cliffs, our narrative shifted from survival to stewardship, nurturing not just us, but the ripples we'd cast. Joe's tour wrapped with a homecoming show at the Crystal Ballroom, balcony shaking under stomps, his encore a medley of our milestones. Rainy night riffs into wedding waltzes. I watched from wings, heart swelling, Scout's bandana rainbowed in solidarity. Post-tour glow faded into routine's embrace. We adopted a second rescue, Luna, a wiry terrier mix with Joe's mischievous glint, turning yard chases into symphonies of barks. My design firm stabilized, a small team in a Pearl loft, projects blending commerce with cause. Branding for trans youth nonprofits, logos pulsing pride. Conflict simmered domestic. Renovation dreams for the bungalow clashed. Joe's vision rustic with reclaimed wood. Mine modern minimal. Arguments flared over paint swatches. His cozy chaos mocked as clutter. My sleek lines dismissed as sterile. "This house is us," he'd insist, gesturing to mismatched mugs. "Why sand the edges?" One spat peeked over a demo wall. Sledgehammer paused mid-swing, dust motes dancing in sunbeams. "Because edges hurt," I snapped, old wounds surfacing. Control as balm for chaos lost. He lowered the tool, sweat beading. "Then let's build without blueprints. Together." We compromised. Shiplap accents with clean lines. The process a metaphor. Love's labor, forgiving imperfections. Betrayal revisited in subtler guise. A fan email to Joe, effusive praise twisting obsessive. "Your songs saved me, but you'd save me more." Boundaries tested. He shared with me, we crafted a gentle rebuff. But it unearthed my insecurities. Fame's glare on our private world. "Am I enough?" I asked one dawn, coffee steaming, Willamette fogged below. He cupped my face, thumb tracing scar from a biking wipeout. "You're the verse, Jord. Fans hear the chorus. You sing the bridge." Summer circuits. Family reunion in Eugene, his mom's new rancher bustling with cousins. Grill smoke carrying tales of his dad's logging yarns. I bonded over cards with uncles, their gruff nods evolving to backslaps. "Good on ya, kid," one said. Joey's grinning wider than since he was knee-high. Fall festivals fed the soul. Wordswarm lit fest, where I read excerpts from a graphic novel I'd penned. Our story, anonymized as Rain and Rag. Illustrations capturing that first fluorescent meet. Joe illustrated covers, his sketches raw as lyrics. Climax brewed in November chill. Wildfires raged again, evacuations rippling east. Joe's mom's neighbor called. Blaze encroaching, help needed. We caravanned gear, generators, hoses, joining bucket brigades under smoke-choked skies. Adrenaline surged, faces blackened, but unity forged. Strangers to allies, hands blistering in solidarity. In the aftermath, ash sifting with volunteers, Joe strummed an impromptu fireside ballad, voices joining in harmony. "This is America," he said later, soot-streaked. "Broken but banding." Winter solstice brought introspection. We hosted a Yule log ritual at home, friends circling the hearth, queer chosen family, Mia leading toasts to resilience. Luna and Scout gnawed bones, oblivious to depths. Spring unfurled opportunity. Joe's label pitched a collab album with a Seattle queer folk collective. I tagged for art direction, road-tripping the sound in a van crammed with instruments. Stops at Olympic hot springs, steam rising like prayers, deepened bonds. Late-night jams birthing tracks about gestures grand and small. Back home, Betrayal's Echo. A junior designer at my firm plagiarized a concept, client fallout looming. Heart sank, trust fractured anew. Confrontation in the loft, tears and terminations. But Joe's counsel grounded, teach, don't torch, rise by lifting. I mentored instead, workshopping revisions, turning mishap to mastery. The client stayed, praising growth. Summer solstice. Beach bonfire at Short Sands, waves lapping, stars pricking velvet sky. Joe proposed proper knee in sand, ring upgraded with emerald for his eyes. Marry me, not the idea? Yes, tumbled out, salt-kissed. Ceremony redux. Intimate under gorge basalt, officiant a park ranger friend. Vows vowed stewardship, to tend the garden of us, weeding doubts, watering dreams. Fall harvest. Album launch at Aladdin Theater, marquee glowing our names entwined. Sold out, standing ovation, after-party spilling into streets, Portland's night alive with possibility. Winter's hush, pregnancy talks, surrogacy dreams with a cousin's offer, or adoption paths. Whatever, Joe said, mittened hands clasped on a snowy esplanade. As long as it's ours. Climax's afterglow. National news spotlighted our wildfire aid song, royalties funding recovery kits. Betrayal transformed. Plagiarist apologized publicly, crediting inspiration. Humanities thread. Mentoring at-risk youth at the Y, Joe's acoustics teaching rhythm, my pencils sketching futures. That gesture's legacy. From lonely aisle to communal chorus. In America's mosaic, our patch vibrant, veined with trials, reminded. Love pulls not just from dark, but propels toward light, one small act at a time. Decades distilled our saga into legend whispered at Portland gatherings. The grocery clerk and the designer, rain-forged icons of quiet revolution. By 2045, the bungalow sagged under ivy, but thrived. Studio expanded to a home label, Rain Root Records, nurturing emerging queer voices with grants from our wildfire fund. Aging graced us unevenly. Joe's hair silvered like Willamette frost, my temples threaded gray, lines etching laugh crinkles deep. Scout and Luna long buried under the swing, their ghosts in every creek. We adopted Milo, a lanky lab pup, his boundless energy a tonic for arthritic knees. Conflict crested late. Joe's label hit turbulence. A producer embezzling royalties. Betrayals sting familiar. Boardroom battles in our Pearl office. Accusations flying like confetti turned shrapnel. We built this clean, Joe thundered, voice hoarse from disuse. Not on shortcuts. I mediated, designs for rebranding symbolizing rebirth, Phoenix evergreens rising ash. Lawsuits settled, but scars lingered. Trust in collaborators reevaluated. Our inner circle shrinking to steel. Healing hiked the familiar. Forest park trails. Canes tapping roots we'd planted saplings along. Remember when this was escape? He'd puff, pausing at vistas. Now it's anchor. Betrayal's bomb. The thief confessed, repaying with service. Mentoring at the Y, full circle sharp as a hook. Summer circuits evolved. Family swelled with a surrogacy miracle. Our son, River, born under July stars, hazel eyes mirroring mine, curls like Joe's. Diapers and lullabies reshaped nights, his tiny fists clutching our rings. Little gesture bearer, Joe cooed. rocking him porchside, guitar soft. Fall festivals. River's first word swarm, toddling amid booths. My graphic novel sequel seasons entwined launching to Cheers. Illustrations now included him, chubby cheeks in rainy capes. Climax brewed in winter gale. Wildfires, perennial foe, scorched east again. River's school evacuated. Our homes spared but hearts not. We loaded the van, generators, guitars, Milo, joining relief convoys, River wide-eyed at tent cities. In a high school gym turned shelter, Joe strummed for shell-shocked kids, River passing cookies. A teen, smoke-scented, gripped my sleeve. Your story inspired my coming out. Tears pricked. Legacy lived. Spring thawed with triumph. Label stabilized. New signings blooming. A trans fiddler from Bend. Non-binary rapper from the Res. River's adoption finalized. Papers stamped with our names. Betrayal's final fade. The Embezzler, reformed, produced a track for us. Duet on enduring love, Grammy-nod whispering. Human arc peaked in elder grace. River grew musician-designer hybrid. His wedding under gorge basalt echoing ours. Vows vowing cycles unbroken. We retired slow. Joe teaching at PSU folk programs. Me guest lecturing on ethical design. Afternoons on the swing, Milo at feet. Reminiscing that Safeway night. You know, Joe said one dusk. Head on my shoulder. City lights kindling. That rag? Best impulse buy. I chuckled, ring-worn hand in his. Pulled me from the brink. Into forever. Portland's seasons wheeled eternal. Rain to rose, fog to fire. Our love the constant. Dramatic in trials, emotional in depths. Romantic in routines, human in humility. In America's vast narrative, ours a footnote, profound. One gesture's chain, linking lonely souls to communal dawn. No tragedies close, but humanism's hope, love, the ultimate pull, from winter's grip to spring's embrace.